Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Today is May 4th, 2023, bringing you the best in solar, wind, and energy storage news every Thursday at noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking about the Midwest Solar Expo, where I just came back from. We're going to be talking about John Weaver's quest for hundreds of megawatts of community solar in New York State. And with that, I will welcome Mr. Weaver to the show. Welcome, John.
Hey Tim, sorry my weird ever-changing background. I'm in a different space, different room. Got booted out of my normal recording studio. I need to make sure I reserve this space so nobody can kick me out of it. Look at that, add time, bam. So we're good. So now it's technically our space. It's a blue screen behind me instead of a green one.
I want to
So
remind our listeners that the Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. With a focus on commercial and utility scale solar and energy storage, the company partners with customers to provide unparalleled performance and service. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters from 25 kW to 275 kW. They also have exceptional data communication and controls and energy storage solutions designed for seamless integration with CPS America systems. CPS America has offices in California, New Jersey, and Texas. Learn more at chintpowersystems.com. And I got to hang out a little bit with Chint at the show in Chicago, the Midwest Solar Expo. If you're not familiar with the Midwest Solar Expo, which it sounds like you're not, John, you
nope.
really want to plan to be there. It's always in the spring and historically was in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota. But at my encouraging and some others, they moved it to Chicago this year, and we had 600 attendees. Really good turnout. Shout out to Jake Rosemarin and Sharona, who organized that conference. Jake is with Antenna Group. But we'll be giving some highlights from my experience there, and but I wanted to let you, John, give our listeners a taste of what you wanted to talk about with your quest for community solar in New York State also.
Sure, but we're not going to talk about you being exhausted at a conference, running around, trying to keep your focus, and having so much information flow into your eyeballs that it
Yeah,
just
it
ah.
definitely is one of those brain exploding moments.
Mhm.
A lot of great conversations and insights. I got to interview Carrie Zalewski of the Illinois Commerce Commission. She is our chairman. That is our PUC here in Illinois, the ICC as it's known. They oversee the utilities. They every PUC is different. In Illinois, they don't oversee generation, but they oversee the grid and many aspects of grid operators, and of course the renewable energy programs. So she and I got to chat for 45 minutes in front of the big group, and
Uh,
I also got to interview Leslie McCain of the Illinois Solar and Storage Association. She is the executive director for the last decade on what's going on in Illinois, and a special treat, John, for me was that Governor Pritzker. Uh, JB Pritzker, our state's governor, gave a recorded introduction and greeting to the group in which he called out the 10 gigawatts of solar that Illinois is going to be installing between now and 2030. So we have 2 gigawatts. We're going to go to 10 by 2030. That means we're going to 5x the Illinois solar market um, in the next 7 years. Um,
There was an
and
announcement in the last day or two of 78 new projects being on that put up or awarded the community solar volume. Do you offhand know the capacity of that volume?
um, I don't know exactly, but you can guesstimate that those are 5 megawatt AC, so
Yep.
6 megawatt DC, or 6.5 megawatt DC projects for the most part. That's that's what's happening in community solar now in Illinois. We've gone from 2 megawatts AC, or what was 2.4 to 2.7 DC, to now 5/6. Yeah, it's good. I haven't had a chance to fully digest that story, but if you wanna tell us more, and I'll put that on screen,
Yeah.
um, that would be a good thing.
Just quick press release that came out from the state. 78 projects were approved, and many of them are rooftop. In fact, 49 of them were rooftop projects located in Greater Chicago area, leaving 30-ish to be more distributed ground mount projects. And of the ground mount, apparently nearly all of them have committed to doing pollinator friendly or grazing or something else. And it says it doesn't give a capacity, but it does suggest 26,000 households. And,
Well, the
you know,
subtitle says add 170 megawatts.
oh, well, then
So,
there's the number. Oh, it's
uh,
right at the top.
yeah.
Geez. Tim, reading the article headline is very important. I just tend to go straight into it and forget the obvious things. That's the one thing I was looking for. Okay, so another 170 megs is coming. All
Yep.
right. Now, I have a question. As an outsider watching this Illinois program and a couple of times writing on it, this seems like a hard program to build a business model around. Is there any consistency in knowing as a developer that your project might get chosen? Is it like a random thing? Is there something you can do to say I have a project, or is it always right up until the lottery ball falls? Is it always I don't know, we'll see. We submitted, let's find out.
Yeah, it's not a lottery. It is a point system now,
Okay, it's like
and so
Jersey.
sorry.
It's like Jersey.
Yeah, I guess I'm not super familiar with the Jersey market, but you get points for doing projects in low and medium income communities or energy communities. You get points for pollinator friendly. You get points for agrivoltaics. You get points for energy communities. And these are all good things, right? We want to encourage development in these geographies, of course. There's a plethora of just wonderful open farm fields, but if we can use brownfields first, absolutely want to do that and save the farm fields for some other use, or dual use, right? And that's the cool thing. And the dual use. There was a session on agrivoltaics, and there are dozens now of agrivoltaics projects under development in Illinois. So that was encouraging to hear. Developers are leaning in and grabbing onto that point. It's only one point that you get for agrivoltaics, I think, but
Yeah.
you gotta be competitive. It is highly competitive, John,
Hmm.
especially around community solar. That is the one thing that I think some developers are reticent about the Illinois market for, and because there's a lot of competition, and the early adopters do have some advantage. If you were early in getting site control, especially of brownfield sites or energy community sites. Um, but happy to tell you what I know about the Illinois solar market. I try to be knowledgeable about it, and generally, I have to say that the developers and EPCs I spoke with in Chicago the last couple of days are very upbeat about Illinois. And when you think about the numbers, we've got 8 more gigs in the next 7 years, so almost a gig a year, and that includes 250 megawatts approximately of community solar, 250 megawatts of large DG, meaning large CNI, and then uh, I think another 250 of Resi and 250 of LMI, roughly speaking. So it's game on in Illinois across the board. And then um, I will say, John, one of my favorite sessions at this conference was a discussion between Swift Current Energy and the city of Chicago. Shout out to Carolyn Mann from Swift Current. And this was discussing a project that is 788 megawatts. It is a ginormous
Wow.
project. It's 4,000 acres being developed in Sangamon County, south of Springfield, Illinois. So this is in MISO territory. It's a virtual sleeve through PPA for the city of Chicago. And so the way they made this happen was, and Swift Current had started developing this project back in 2018. And then they were able to get the dialogue going with the city of Chicago. Rahm Emanuel made an announcement, I think in 2018 or 19, that he's the former mayor, that the city was going to go completely green for their energy supply. And so then it's just a question of how. And but it was through Constellation Energy, which is an alternative energy supplier here in Illinois, that the deal was able to really happen, because the projects in MISO, Chicago's obviously in PJM in northern Illinois or ComEd territory, but they're a Constellation customer, so they buy their kWh from Constellation, and then so Constellation technically is buying the power from the Swift Current project, and not all of it. There are multiple off-takers on this. Double Black Diamond, as the project is known, and it's under construction. And what I know is they're using First Solar modules. Okay, so thin film, American-made First Solar modules and Nextracker racking. And we think the inverter is SunGrow, but we're not 100% on that. But anyway, just an awesome project. It's a very innovative approach to large-scale PPA. I think they're offsetting something like a third of the city's electric consumption with the PPA that they've signed for this project. They're still going to do a bunch of DG, hopefully in Cook County. They're starting with their libraries, the city-owned libraries. And so it's a both and, that they're going to do like on-site solar and this off-site sleeve-through PPA with Swift Current.
I also know that they were trying to sign a big wind deal to bring it from the west into the city. And of course, there's pushback because I think the wind power line, and I don't know if this was the Grain Express, but it may have been that line, that power line. But there was pushback because PJM didn't like a power line coming into its territory from SPP territory or a different territory. I think it was SPP. And so PJM, the power grid manager, I believe, complained about a farm from Idaho or Iowa or somewhere Midwesty that was sending a electricity east. So it's a complex purchase that was ongoing. It might still be ongoing, and I think the Midwest Grain Express or the Green Grain Express, I don't know, I don't remember what the power line was called, but the Express, it was part of a complex argument that was bouncing around. So yeah, that's a big city trying to go. Now, Illinois has like 40-50% at least of its electricity from nuclear power, right?
Yeah, about 40%.
So is there going to be a big push for some batteries to like fit in, because we want the nukes to just run, and you have that nice 40% baseline. For the rest of it, that last 60%, we're going to have all kinds of stuff waving, but in daytime we're going to have solar eventually start dipping into that 40% number. How's the energy storage? How's that market being considered to, is it being developed properly?
Yeah, we do have a good incentive in CEJA, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. That is our new RPS. And there's a good incentive built into that for storage. It's $250 per kWh. So it's quite generous. And that applies to both C&I scale and utility scale storage. And Carolyn Mann from Swift Current Energy did say that they are looking at storage for a phase 2 of the Double Black Diamond. And then, of course, we also have some coal to solar legislation baked into CEJA. It was a separate AstroTurf bill, as we solar professionals call it, where a fleet owner, I can't remember the name of the uh, I'll look it up while we're talking the utility, but there's a utility. I think it's Vistra from Texas owns a fleet of coal plants in Illinois that they're
Hmm.
converting now to solar and battery. And so there's special incentive, there's special carve out for that particular fleet of coal plants. Some of them have already been shut down, and then some are just scheduled for it, like in the next 5 years. And so those are going to be generally 4 hour batteries, and on the scale of 10 to 100 megawatt hour, and and then equivalent size or slightly bigger solar facilities. But yeah, good question. Got it. You got to get lots of storage on the grid, and you got to keep the nukes running, right? The nukes
Yeah.
are going to keep running in order for Illinois to achieve its. I think Illinois' goal ultimately is to be carbon free by 2050, and then um, 40% renewables by I think 2045. So lots of wind and solar in development, and it goes in waves. But now we're in an uptick. We came out of that. We were plateaued for a couple of years. We came out of that with the signing of CEJA in 21, and now in 23 we've hit a major construction boom. Right, there's a major construction boom happening now with community solar and utility scale solar, and of course Resi and DG too. It's all of the above. So it's there is a labor shortage. That is a challenge, and there are incentives in Siege also for training. So there were a lot of training organizations, including the IBEW and the Carpenters Union. The IBEW had these two massive semis that they drive around the state, promoting clean jobs and trying to attract trainees to their programs, because we need 1 million electricians in America, and the only way to get that is to attract a lot of young people to the trades, among other things. Um, so hopefully, my son Finn will be among them.
So there's a lot going on in Illinois. That's interesting. Yeah, and I agree with the needing a lot of electricians. I'm seeing it around my place, trying to support our key electrician, our key master electrician, so that he can have a more consistent chunk of business and take care of us better, because it's growing small electricians into medium-sized ones. That's
Yep,
probably going to be a lot of what happens. And then, of course, big electricians will just get bigger because we're going to have lots of consistent work. So,
yep.
cool.
And I want to make a special point of shouting out to the Illinois Solar and Storage Association. We still call it ISEA, ISEA. And I had a very nice chat on stage with Leslie McCain, the longtime executive director. We talked about storage, of course, and labor, how the program's going, and she likes to keep it very positive. I would prefer to dive into some of the challenges. There are challenges, it's interconnection challenges, for example, which we did talk. Carrie and I did talk quite a bit about that, and she hosted. She actually. Um, she led a discussion which I wasn't able to attend on interconnection challenges, but she hinted that in my interview with her that things are going to get better. So the ICC is working on that, and basically pursuing what they call market reform.
Hmm.
Uh, the way that the way that utilities make decisions today is less than ideal. Okay, that's a simple way of putting it,
Yeah.
and 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 that can be reformed, right? It can become more democratic, basically, and have more industry influence, so that we can un unlock this backlog. Sean Casten, our congressman from Northern Illinois, also gave a keynote at the event, and shout out to Congressman Casten. He's been a wonderful addition to Congress because he's a legit entrepreneur. He's an energy professional, and has a science background. So he's not just an attorney like so many of our other elected officials in Washington, and he's really become like the go-to for the Democrats anyway on energy policy. But he pointed out, that we have 2,000 gigawatts, John, of projects waiting for interconnection, and this includes wind and solar, and it's a real problem, right, for greening the grid. This backlog of 2,000 gigawatts. I think he said that the current grid is 1,250 gigawatts. Does that resonate? Because we are going to
Yeah,
double, or we're going to
it's
double or triple
close.
the capacity on the grid, right, when we electrify transportation. So we do need a much more robust and higher gigawatts of
Yes.
grid power.
Yeah. I mean, the 1250 number sounds right. Um, we have more capacity in the grid than there is grid currently. But when we account for a capacity factor, then of course things get a little more complex. But
Right.
yeah, 1250 sounds about right. And yeah, we have 2,000 gigawatts in the queues. I saw a neat thing, a neat line in SPP, which is a very large grid management region that goes from probably next to Illinois all the way down to New Mexico. It's a big chunky area. Um, it has like a peak demand of like 58 gigawatts, 60 gigawatts, I think, and it has about 10x that much in its queue. So there are people ready to switch out as much as the grid as they possibly can. And so yeah, there's going to be a lot of interconnection talk. So interesting. Illinois is a big state with a lot of people, and they have a community solar program that's one of the at least gets good headlines in the nation. So
Yeah, it's a
um,
top five community solar program. We're a top 10 state for solar, period. Um, I'll sprinkle in some other highlights, but I want to talk about
yeah,
your story, John. You
all
you
right.
wrote a lovely blog piece about what's going on at Commercial Solar Guy, and um,
We should talk about it a little. So
we should talk about it a little. The title is Land Lease for Solar Farms Sought by Commercial Solar Guy following 100 megawatt deal. What was the 100 megawatt deal? That's what I want to know.
all right. So about a year ago, Tim, we actually spoke about the portfolio on this show.
Oh, you had to rub
Um,
salt in that wound, John. You just had to do it,
Damn.
didn't
I'm
you?
sorry. Yeah. So it's a portfolio of community solar projects in upstate New York, all of them in NYSEG territory. And it was 101 megawatts. We've lost about three projects, but we're trying to get some more back now. And we sold the portfolio to Scale Microgrid, who's based in Manhattan, Jersey. And they're a developer well, they're an asset owner, not a developer, but they do develop really cool projects that do solar plus storage plus gas. They have these neat genset units that they combine all of them in the controls so they can offer a mostly clean option. Um, and so we sold that portfolio, officially signed the MIPA, the Master Agreement, something something, um, on the last day of the business year in last year, because that was our requirement. And so now we're working through it. Projects are moving through various processes, and it turns out three of our projects probably won't move through. And so we're aiming for another 15 megawatts, 16 megawatts of capacity, and seeking approximately uh, 60-ish acres maybe of space. 4 acres per megawatt, roughly 3 to 5, depends on the site. And so we are seeking NYSEG, so New York State Gas and Electric Territory, just because that's where our other projects were, and it would make for a consistent process. And so the purpose of this article on my website was first to announce that we had sold a program, and then second to bring up to people, hey, we're looking for a little more land. So if anybody finds my website, they can reach out. And then third, to show the program that we're in, and to give a little bit of description of what's going on, what we're bidding into. Additionally, we give a link to the hosting capacity analysis map so that if people wanted to click on it and see if their land was nearby, they could get a rough thing. And then these images you're seeing, this is a project we're actually building in New York State. So this is at a casino in Nichols County. It's Tioga Downs. And this is not part of the portfolio. This is a separate project. but this is about a 744 kW DC single axis tracker that's in a piece of land they weren't using next to their parking lot. And so we're doing a behind the meter, plugging it right in, and it's going to have a little bit of batteries, it's going to have some trackers, it's going to have some oddly set up inverters, but we're going to pump a little juice into a casino.
Nice.
And so this is us constructing it. And so this article is just to get us some leads, some land leads, and to show off Commercial Solar Guy, because we're going to scale Commercial Solar Guy to a $250 million company by 2026. That's the thing I keep telling myself in my head. 26 sounds a little soon. Let's say 27. But now we have to grow the company, and so we have a little more capital coming in. We have no debt, paid off all of our bills. Now it's about how to grow, what the next pieces are to put together. And we have some ideas. We recently hired a sales firm, and so we'll be working with an outbound sales guy, and we are taking on a fractional CFO to help us put together portfolios better, trying to figure out what to do in Pennsylvania. And I think I have a path, and I keep getting inbound leads. I have more land opportunities in Pennsylvania than I know what to do with right now, and so got to figure out how to use that market. I want to make something happen like that in New York as well if we can. So I'll do a series of articles describing what's going on in New York, just to, tell people what we're doing, try to get more website traffic, and so that's it. We sold a portfolio, super excited about it, and I would love to do some agrivoltaics. So,
Yeah, shout
Lightstar,
out to Joe Sharf. Thanks for the comment, Joe. It was good to see you in Chicago. Joe is a agrivoltaics enthusiast and engineer and farmer. He owns some land up in Wisconsin that we've been looking at. So anyway, good to see Joe and so many wonderful colleagues at Midwest Solar Expo, including Nico Johnson, who I
Nico.
just dropped an interview with on Tuesday of this week. Oh, I forgot. I have an announcement that I need to make, and that is about an event I'm hosting here at the Clean Power Hour next week. Let me get this on screen. We are hosting a webinar and discussion on nimbyism, and this is a vital topic for anyone doing ground mount solar across the United States. We have Davi Wilson with Apex Clean Energy. She's actually just moved on from Apex. She can't talk about what's next for herself, but Davi is kind of an OG and a thought leader when it comes to constituent relations. And then we have Aaron Halimi with Renewable Properties. Aaron is the CEO of Renewable Properties, a well-known community solar developer working in the California market, which is one of the most challenging markets to work in when it comes to permitting ground mount solar. So Davi and Aaron are giving a free webinar May 10th. Go to cleanpowerhour.com, hit the events tab, and you will find this registration page. Or if you're watching the recording, you can just pause it and take a screenshot of the register QR code right here, and that will take you to the Zoom link where you register for a free event May 10th, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific, and 1 Central. So looking forward to having Davi and Aaron on for Overcoming NIMBYism, Best Practices for Solar Development.
I today, for PV Magazine, wrote an article, hasn't been published yet, where we're going to do a little bit of highlighting a group whose name I'm not going to say on the air because I don't want to give them too much attention, but maybe I should. They're called Citizens for Renewable Solar. They're a Washington, D.C. founded nonprofit whose goal
Yeah, we've
is
reported on them here, right, on the show.
they got covered by NPR couple months ago. And so what I want to do for PV Magazine is first make sure we show off this company, make sure that they are very clearly known who they are, what they do. In fact, in our portfolio in New York, they showed up as we were doing land development. So one of my land people specifically messaged me and said, John, this company is at our show or at our town meeting. What do you know about them? What should we do about them? I said, here's their arguments. Here's our best way to respond. I gave my responses. Our team kept talking. I believe we got our deal through. Our projects are under 50 acres, so not as much pushback. But Citizens for Responsible Solar is a fake solar group. They don't care about responsible solar. They're
Right.
fundamentally, they are a fossil funded right wing group. And they're just out there to cause FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And so we will publish soon just an article summarizing what other people have found so the solar people can be reacquainted. And then later we'll publish an article or two breaking down their list. Like, for instance, they have a list of 10 things they say solar is terrible. So we're going to look at all 10 of them and we're going to say, okay, here's lie number one, and here's proper response when you are presenting to a board, when you're presenting to a town. So we'd like to give developers tools to have pre-formatted responses to the fake stuff, and at least prepare ourselves as we go into these meetings.
Yeah, and that's what this webinar really is about, is learning from some of the developers who have developed a playbook. They're willing to share their playbook with the public.
Awesome.
And that's why this event is happening, on proactively developing a ground game, as I call it, for working with local communities. This is landowners, this is neighbors, this is authorities having jurisdiction, people on those zoning boards, etc. And, when we do a good job, John, as solar professionals working with local communities, we can effectively communicate the value proposition and the simple fact that solar is good for the land, it's good for the landowner, it's good for the tax base of the local community, like schools, right? There's real benefit from a financial perspective for the local community when you transition land from pure ag, for example, to ag and solar, or just solar and pollinator. And that's kind of now become the baseline in Illinois. For example, we're going to do pollinator friendly solar on all the sites. And now we're starting to do agrivoltaics, which means cropping some commercial product, whether that's livestock or a crop that you can sell, like hay or strawberries or spinach. And of course, all the details are still being worked out. Joe asks, who are the companies in Northern Illinois that are doing agrivoltaics? And the answer, Joe, is you are. You have to become an agrivoltaic solar developer, Joe, because you have a great background as an engineer and a farmer. And yeah, you mentioned LightSource. Not LightSource. Well, LightSource
No.
is one of the companies. You mentioned
Lightwave. This is a different company.
Lightstar. There
Lightstar,
is a company in Northern Illinois called Lightstar who served on the ag panel, and Theo, shout out to Theo. And but there really are no there's no developer that's doing just agrivoltaics, for example. All of the developers want points and are starting to look at this. So literally, if you look at the awards of who's winning solar projects, those are the developers that are considering, or if they're not considering it, they will be soon, developing agrivoltaics. It's not easy, right? Because it does increase it does potentially increase the cost of developing the solar project, right? If you have to jack the array up for whatever you're going to grow underneath it, that's going to cost more money. Now, if you can just grow hay in the rows between the trackers and not change the design too much, just put a 15-foot space between rows and away you go, that could also be, more of a no-brainer. But it's totally TBD. You got to work with Alexis Pascaris, right, and Sandbox, who we've had on the show. I don't know, John. What are your thoughts about developing agrivoltaics?
So Lightstar, I think, and I'm poking around to verify, but they're actually working on, let's see, 31 agrivoltaic projects in a 208 megawatt portfolio that is composed heavily of agrivoltaics. So I think they're pushing hard for it. I think Blue Wave is trying to push agrivoltaics as well.
Yes, they are, absolutely.
It's still a small niche, though, to be honest. The big projects are moving forward. Yeah, they might be pollinator friendly, but pollinator friendly isn't agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics.
No, it's not.
Yeah, agrivoltaics is going to be necessary to combat the argument of we're losing prime farmland. And in order to have that argument, either A, it had to be grazing land or grassland, or we're going to have to do what I define as a proper agrivoltaic facility, and that being crops
I mean,
underneath.
commercial honey, I guess, could be considered agrivoltaics. You've got to be growing the food inside the fence, right? And for the most part, I think the bee growers are using the area around the array more than
Yeah,
inside the array. As our friend, I think we had a guest. I can't remember his name now, who was talking about that, right?
yep, yeah, the Midwest guy, based in Minnesota, North Dakota-ish. So agrivoltaics is coming, and many people are going to figure it out. And I'm seeing it in Europe. I'm seeing it pushed very hard in Italy, who's very limited in its total land. And I think we actually had a cool article last week about agrivoltaics. So it's coming. What I would say is that as we progress from 4 to 5% of our electricity to 40%, we're going to grow 95% more, 90% more. We're going to find a nice chunk of agrivoltaics. I think it's going to be smaller projects, community solar maybe, because 50-acre farms with crops are pretty solid sized. Maybe it'll grow bigger. I saw a 500-acre agrivoltaic facility being pitched in Central Eastern Europe, and so maybe we will have these bigger facilities. Across Europe, there's a lot of testing. I have two or three companies who've been doing significant testing that I've been watching. Maybe Enel, Iberdrola. We actually talked about this last week. Some large utility scale groups who are testing. Engie is testing agrivoltaics on a larger scale.
Yep.
Apples, and I could show you a list of different foods that have been grown underneath this. So I think it's going to come. I think it's going to be valuable. I think it's still going to be a niche, but it might be a 10% niche. It could be a chunky niche, and we have a lot of capacity to go and a lot of town fights to have. And agrivoltaics is going to be a solution. I'm working on a very small one. You know what the problem is so far? Interconnection, Tim. We got to submit for interconnection. We have our one-line stamps ready. I think in the next day or two we'll be submitting it. Hopefully today, tomorrow. So it's still going to be interconnection before agrivoltaics hits. So
Yep.
yeah, I like the concept. We got to keep using it. We got to keep pushing it. We got to use it as a tool to make sure we can deploy responsibly, properly, responsibly.
And I think grazing is going to be a very popular solution, right? Because you've got to do vegetation management, period.
Yep.
Here in the Midwest, anyway. Maybe not in the desert Southwest, okay, where things don't grow that much. But here in the Midwest, if you don't do vegetation management, you'll get small trees growing up inside your array where you don't want woody vegetation, but you'll have these massive 10-foot tall weeds, and then the locals will just freak out because they don't want to see weeds. Period. And you're shading your array with a 10-foot tall weed. I mean, these weeds are just they're they're bigger than me, which is, and we have super fertile soil. We have some of the best soil, bar none, here in Central Illinois, for example. But sheep will control the vegetation. You don't have you're not running a mower or a tractor on the site, right, with a gasoline engine. If you can run sheep on it. Now, there are some electric robotic mowers coming. Renew Robotics is a company that we both saw at SPI last year, or RE Plus, and I've had them on the show a couple years ago. We'll have to get an update, but they're doing it. They have a charging station on site, and so the robot works 24/7 when needed, and mows the field automatically. But I mean, don't you think that grazing is going to be a predominant source of agrivoltaics when you think about the Midwest?
Sure, could be.
I don't know how
You
big
know,
the sheep market is, but I mean the solar, the ASGA, the American Solar Grazing Association, seems to be going gangbusters.
yeah, I do think grazing is going to matter a lot. The challenges with grazing. Well, I mean, the challenges with distributing solar across the Midwest is going to be where are the demand centers, where's the interconnection, how are we going to get the electricity to the source? And if we're going to fields that are in Nebraska, I mean, Nebraska is going to build solar. It's going to be the last state in the union to build solar if they have a choice. And Yeah, they're like 90% coal. They just dig it up, throw it straight in. But they have a huge amount of cows, so you'd think there could be an alignment there.
Yeah.
It's, the challenge is going to be interconnection. Can we place it there? Absolutely. We have enough land. I mean, the blunt truth is, Tim, everybody does talk about pushback from landowners, but reality is that we do have enough land and we do have enough people that can do whatever the heck they want with their land. And we do have the capacity, we do have the space. So it's going to be that the states are going to force us to do some agrivoltaic. And I have a feeling it's going to happen in the community solar space because that's where the incentives are. The wholesale large scale market, at
Yeah.
most they're going to do grazing because of in my opinion, at most they're going to do grazing.
Yeah,
Is
Lightsource BP is a good example of that. They are doing
Yeah.
large scale grazing projects.
Now, I would say the Silicon Ranch people, those folks are impressive, and we should have them on the show and just have them bless the rest of us with the knowledge that they're gaining because they're looking to be truly citizens, responsible landowners, and they're doing things like soil sequestration research. They're supporting the local farmers. They're really working their butts off to deliver projects that are defendable when we come down to this. Hey, are we doing good for the earth with this work? And
Hmm.
so there are some utility scale folks who are pushing it. So I think in the smaller scale, even I'm going to be doing a new article soon. New Jersey just approved an agrivoltaic program for a 5 to 10 megawatt range, plus or minus. And we're going to get to talk about Rutgers and some of the research they're doing. I saw my first larger sized vertical bifacial facility, and I was like, "Ooh," in the U.S. at least, getting applied. So maybe in this 2 to 10 megawatt space, we're going to have real crop-based agrivoltaics. In the larger sizes, where the farming might be more challenging, where they might just want clear fields for full sunlight corn and soy, maybe that's just going to be grazing or pollinator friendly. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it comes. I was just shown a nice list of over 300 pollinator crop agrivoltaic facilities as tracked by the Department of Energy. I was researching it with a gentleman this morning, and I was like, wow, I'd never seen that list before, tracked by the Department of Energy. So it's growing, it's coming. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, it's a wide variety of opportunities. Hopefully, we have, in the Northeast, we have blueberries and this crop and this crop, and in the Midwest, we have this crop, and out here we have grazing. I mean, if we could do a quarter of our solar facilities with any sort of agrivoltaic attachment, whether it's pollinator, grazing, or crops, we're doing a great job, and that will help the industry and let us do a better job. So it's coming. Lindsay from Monarch, well, they're not Monarch anymore, but Lindsay from Pennsylvania, I can't remember her company name right now, but they're awesome. Ernst Seeds.
Mm.
They have great pollinator. There's a Midwest company they're associated with that do great pollinator. I like that. Each piece matters. So I'm
Yeah.
just pro all of it, and I hope we figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have a good point that the smaller scale stuff is probably where the action is mostly going to be, but it's a both and. Um, I would love to get Silicon Ranch on the show. If you have a connection there,
Oh
make
yeah,
it happen.
absolutely.
Um,
Well, good. So I'm gonna message them before the end of the show.
all right,
Thanks,
great.
Joseph, for the research. You're like good here. We got to keep you. We got to start inviting you. We'll start paying you to show up.
Joe is pretty much full time looking at the agrivoltaics market, trying to figure out where his angle is going to be, and he lives in northern Illinois. So if you're a developer interested in agrivoltaics, looking for a consultant, Joe might be someone to talk to. And but of course, I mean not Lexi, Alexis Pascaris
Alexis.
with the Agri Solar Consulting Group
Mm-hmm.
is one of our favorite shout outs on the show because that's really they do nothing but and so anyway, we should probably talk about a few other news stories. But
Sure.
before we go to the next story, John, I wanted to give a quick highlight on one other thing I got to be involved with at the Midwest Solar Expo, and that was a session about a floating microgrid
Ooh.
in Fort Wayne, Indiana. developer EPC called Solential, just like it sounds, Solential, is developing a solar battery and gas generator, I think gas or diesel, I'm not sure which, microgrid for the city of Fort Wayne, located on their wastewater treatment facility. And it's one of these cases where the floating part is going, the water level ebbs and flows, and so it's designed to float, of course, but also sit on the ground if necessary. And that's one of the cool things about floating solar is you can design that flexibility into it. It's non-trivial, the engineering of floating solar, and that was one of the things that in some of the Q&A was revealed, that the cost of FPV, as we call it, floating photovoltaics or photovoltaics, is non-trivial. And the nice thing is that we have a lot of bodies of water, like wastewater treatment facilities, like drinking water. I can't remember what they're called, but these basins where you dam a river and you have this drinking water reservoir. That's it. Like out in California, that's a big thing. The FPV reduces the amount of evaporation from the source of water, so it's preserving fresh water, which is crucial in some geographies, not here so much in the Midwest. But anyway, just a great project. It's a couple hundred kW. I couldn't find the exact statistic. They haven't made a press release, even as far as I could find, on the project, but they were there with an engineer from the city of Fort Wayne, talking about this project. And who knew about Solential? It was one of these aha moments until Chris at the floating racking company. What is the name of that company?
Ciel de Terre.
Ciel de Terre, a French
go.
company. I wish they would discover an American name, an English name. Now, I have nothing against French, but it just doesn't quite roll off my tongue, even though I did study French for 4 years in high school. Shame on me. So anyway, that was a cool thing. Floating microgrid in Fort Wayne. Reach out to Solential for more information, because I really don't have a whole lot, but it was there. Photovoltaics is coming to the Midwest now. You've seen announcements in California, New Jersey, the like two of the earliest markets, and Florida, I think, now has some photovoltaics. But
yep, they do.
Yep, berdoodle, it's coming.
All right.
You found some beautiful rooftop solar photos. You want to talk about that?
Actually, Tim, I have to run early today because I have a big meeting that's starting very shortly, and I forgot to bring it up.
That's cool. Do you want to wrap up now, or?
I would love to, just to say, everybody, I appreciate it, but we do have to run on an item. Just my schedule is tight today, and I'm in a funny room.
It's all good. I am crazy busy too, recovering from Midwest Solar Expo, and so please check out the show, cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. That is the best way you can help the show, and of course, tell a friend about the show. We're growing and speeding the energy transition one podcast at a time, and you can be part of that. We do this for you, energy professionals and aspiring energy professionals, developers, EPCs, manufacturers. We're growing the entire industry. And John, how can our listeners find you?
CommercialSolarGuy.com. That's a favorite place. I'm also on Twitter, Solar and Mass, and LinkedIn as often as I can. But CommercialSolarGuy.com, we have a great contact us page, and we're going to update our website. I promise. We're working on it. It's going to be prettier, have some good info, and more pictures of what we're building. What about you, Tim?
CleanPowerHour.com. Go to the events tab. Check out that webinar on nimbyism with Davi Wilson and Aaron at Renewable Properties. It's going to be a great event next week, next Wednesday. So check that out. And with that, I'll say, let's grow solar and storage. I'm Tim Montague. Thank you, John.